This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. This episode of SketchUp, a 3D Toolbox, is brought to you by 3D Connection, makers of the brand new Space Mouse Wireless. To learn more about the best way to navigate in SketchUp, visit www.3dconnection.com. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another edition of SketchUp, a 3D Toolbox. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 61, and today we're going to be wrapping up our apartment remodel project. Now, in our last episode, we did photo match modeling of our cabinet, which turned out really great. Today, we're going to finish up the project by actually rearranging the furniture and getting a sense of what we want to do with this. So this is a really useful tool for remodeling where you essentially recreate the room in SketchUp, which is what we've done here, and you put in the furniture, you measure everything, and you arrange it the way it is right now, so you see what you have to work with. And then in SketchUp, you start remodeling. You start moving couches around and furniture around, putting them up against different walls. You can try different paint colors and textures. There's a lot you can do in SketchUp, and it's a lot easier to do it now, sort of pre-visualizing it before you actually move everything around. Moving a couch in SketchUp is a lot easier like this rather than moving it in real life. So that's what we're going to be working on today. Now, the model looks a little bit different from what it did last time. I did put a bunch of extra things in to kind of finish off the project. Really, I don't think it would have benefited you guys to see me do that because 90% of this stuff is actually from the 3D warehouse. So the couches and stuff, these are actually, this is actually the same model from the 3D warehouse. It's just a little bit different, scale. So I just dropped this one in, scale it to roughly about the right width, and then scaled this one to about the right one. So I've gone ahead and also retextured these. These originally had a more floral pattern on them, and I just textured them a simple brown because this is another thing you can do is you can play around with different colors. So if I wanted to open up the paint bucket tool and say, I want to see what this couch is going to look like if I painted a nice mint green, I could go in here and then I can use the paint bucket tool and I can go ahead and paint all these things green. And because this is actually a component, it's texturing both of them at the same time. So I don't like that personally, so I'm just going to undo that. But you can see this is another really nice thing. You can actually, before you go out and have your couch reupholstered or get a slipcover for it, you can experiment in SketchUp and see how the colors look with everything. So I've gone ahead and done that as well. We've got a nice little cabinet here and a lamp, also pulled in from the 3D warehouse and scaled. We've got our, this is a nice little thing. We photo match modeled this thing. Now, this is actually an IKEA piece. This is from IKEA, and a lot of IKEA's things are on the 3D warehouse. This is also an IKEA piece. They're actually from the same family, so they're the same height, and they could be lined up against each other if you wanted to. So what I did for this is I actually just, again, searched in the 3D warehouse, and I can actually show you what I did for that. If you know the name of the thing in IKEA, and I know this is Expedit. There we go, Expedit. You can see here that somewhere in here, this is actually the one that we did a photo match model of. It's just turned on its side. So mine is the Expedit Media Center. It's somewhere in here. I just downloaded it, and it was in a different color, so I retextured it, and I went ahead and just grabbed a model for a TV just to throw it on there, because it looked a bit odd without the TV. And then this is just a simple lamp, and the rest of it that's pretty much it. So this is what we have to work with. Now, what I'm going to start doing is, there are a couple different ways you can go about doing this. I'm going to show you my process for this. I really like to start with a kind of blank slate. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to select this whole thing that we just did. So that's got the walls, the floor, the furniture, everything in it. And I'm going to go ahead and make it a group. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the Move tool, and I'm going to drag out a copy. Now, this is going to be a bit slow, simply because it's copying a lot. And the Move tool tends to struggle a little bit when you're copying something really, really big. And I'm going to give it quite a bit of space here. And then I'm going to place it. Okay, there we go. So the reason I did this, this will be my original. So this is what it looks like right now. This is my before. I can now make whatever changes I want to my after here and not worry about affecting my original. You could also save a copy of your file, but I kind of like keeping it together in the same project. So I'm going to go ahead and explode this again, and that's going to get it back so that the furniture is all separate from the walls and everything. So now what we can do is we can start with a blank slate in this room. So to do that, I'm going to go up here, and I'm actually going to just select only my pieces of furniture, which are all groups, so it's pretty easy to select all of them. And then I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm not going to drag out a copy. I'm actually going to drag out the actual pieces out into here. There we go. The real world equivalent would be taking all the furniture out of a room and putting it out on your front lawn, for instance, or in another room, just so you can just kind of look in here and see, okay, here's the blank room. What can I do with this? What do I want to do with this? So now I can start just kind of going through one by one and look at these pieces and be like, okay, I want to move this piece, for example, into this corner. Let's see how that works. And let's actually see how that works. I'm going to switch to the move tool, and I'm going to grab it by its bottom corner and just get it in the room first. Now I'm going to grab the rotation from the top, and let's see what this looks like. I'm going to grab it by this corner here, and I'm going to put it right in the back corner. I'm going to switch to the X-ray mode just so I can really snap it into that corner. Very nice. Now let's see how this looks. Okay. So here's an issue. Right away, and this is why I love doing this in SketchUp, without even having to go in and measure this piece and then the wall as you normally would, we can just put it in SketchUp and see, okay, it's a bit big. Just a bit. So this is going to be a problem because I really don't want it overlapping with this door. It just looks a bit messy. So I know that putting it against this wall isn't going to work. And my guess is if I rotate it, it probably isn't going to work against the other wall either. So let's just try that. Rotate it 90 degrees. Put it back up in here. And yeah, no, right away, I don't even have to click. I can see that's going to mess with that window quite a bit. So this is a bit of an odd situation we find ourselves in. I'm going to use a trick on the rotation tool. Let's say I want it to be at an angle in this corner. We can try that. So let's take this top left corner here and let's put it right against the edge of this window. So that's as far over as it can go. And you can see it's clipping into the wall a little bit. And I think I raised it off the ground a little bit too. I'm just going to snap it down like that. There we go. Okay. So it's going through the wall. That is physically impossible in the real world, so we don't want that. Instead, we're going to rotate it at an angle, and we're going to see how little of an angle we can get away with for this thing. To do that, we know that this point right here is as far over as it can be. This point can't go any further to the left, so we're going to leave it like that. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to switch to the rotation tool by hitting the Q key. Now, usually, to rotate something, I just use the move tool and grab these little handles right here, right? Not so this time. The rotation tool has a nifty little feature that can be very, very useful. You can see that when I hover it over it, depending on what face I hover over, it changes the what axis it's going to rotate on. I want it to rotate on the blue axis around the top like this. When I go to the corner, it can be a little bit tricky because depending on minute changes in your mouse position, it will want to snap to a different axis. If I start on the blue axis and hold down the shift key, it won't change. So I can go right to that left corner there and click once. That is the point that this whole thing is going to rotate around. So it's not going to rotate around its center like it normally does. It's going to almost be like it's on a hinge at that point. And then I just need to grab a second point. I'm just going to go along this line. This is where I'm going to grab it from. In fact, I'm going to go... Can I go through? Yes, I can. I'm just going to click on the other end right here. And now when I drag it out, I can swing it. And you can see it's opening almost like a door. So I can put it however I want. Now what this means is I can actually snap to the wall. And I can kind of go and zoom in. And I can see right there, it's still clipping through the wall. I'll go out a little bit more right about there. That's the angle that I would have to do to get it to fit there if I wanted to basically keep the angle as shallow as possible. And honestly, I'm kind of thinking, I think that's pretty nice, actually. I could maybe do it a little bit more. We can actually see if I do that again real quick, you can see what kind of an angle you're going for. I'll just hold down the Shift key, click back over here, find that angle, and if you look down at the bottom right, I'm going at 23 degrees. That might be a little bit weird. Something that shallow is a little bit odd in a room sometimes because it looks like you put it in there on accidentally instead of on purpose. So let's try just putting in another value. Let's try maybe cranking this up to 30 degrees. Not quite 45, but just 30. And then we can select it and we can move it over. There we go. That gives us a little bit of space by our sliding glass door, and it faces out into the room quite nicely. Now, obviously when you're moving a piece like this, if you were to actually move it like this once you're done with your model, you can't just, you could, but it would be really weird if you brought out your protractor and were like, okay, I'm moving this into the corner at 30 degrees, rotating a little bit more, yes, that's good. That would be a bit odd. So what you can do instead is in SketchUp, you can say, okay, I know this is a few inches back from the door there, just line that corner up, and then I want this corner to be, okay, let's see, measure it in SketchUp, 3 feet and actually almost exactly 3 feet, 3 feet and a half an inch maybe. So you can just kind of roughly line it up like that. And that's a lot easier rather than that whole angle thing, because angles don't really help you in the real world, usually. All right, so that's good. Now the next logical step would be the couch. So I'm going to pull in, let's see, do we want the big couch or the little couch? I'm thinking the big couch. So we'll pull this into the room. And now I'm going to go ahead and rotate it to that same angle. So this is the thing. If I just type in 30 degrees right now, I'm going to get this kind of an angle because it's not actually 30 degrees based on its normal thing. It considers this right here to be 0, which is different from what this considers 0 to be. So instead I have to kind of figure out, okay, a 30-degree difference from the way it is right now to there. So 90 degrees minus 30 degrees, because it goes down as it goes towards here, is going to be 60 degrees. So what I actually want is I want to type in 60 and go like that. There we go. Now it's lined up perfectly with our entertainment center, which is exactly what we want. So we'll put that there. And let's go ahead and grab our coffee table while we're at it, because we need to see what that looks like in here too. And then same deal, 60 degrees seems to be pretty much perfect. Now let's go ahead and we can center this. Yeah, let's go ahead and center it. If I snap my move tool to that midpoint in the group, and then I'll just lock it to an axis, which I kind of have to do. It's not going to move exactly left and right in relation to the model. It's going to move left or right in relation to the whole room. So this isn't really going to work. Snapping it like this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to move and reset my axis here. So I'm going to choose the axis tool. I'm just going to use my actual cabinet as the guide for that. Now, when I move this coffee table and snap it to the green axis, it moves like this in relation to the television. That's exactly what I want. Lock it to the midpoint. And let's see here. How much space do we want between here? Let's go for, how much do we have right now? Because typically you want, a general rule of thumb is 18 inches is enough to walk by, but you usually want a little bit more than that. This is a little over 2 feet. Let's make it 3 feet. Why not? Let's give it a lot of space. Just going to draw out a guideline. There we go, 3 feet. And move my thing back. It's a little tricky to see the guideline on the carpet right now, but trust me, it is there. And if you're actually doing this and not watching a video of it, it's a bit easier. We'll just snap it to right about there. That's looking very good. Now the couch is obviously a bit tight right there, so we'll go ahead and move that back. Now again, we're going to hit the wall pretty quick here, so let's go ahead and just move the couch as far back as we can until it touches that wall. There we go. Snapping is your friend. If you grab the point that's going to hit the wall first and then just move to the wall, you can snap to the wall and see exactly how much room you have. That's actually, we couldn't have made that more even if we tried, I don't think. That's looking really good. Just going to get rid of that guideline. So we've got that. So that's a nice little angle thing. We've already changed up the room quite a bit. Now we have this second couch here. Let's see if we can fit it in this back corner. We may or may not be able to. Let's find out. So, and this is another thing. This would be actually really difficult to figure out just by measuring in the room. You would actually physically have to move these into position, and it's a pain. Anyone who's ever redone a room knows it's a pain to go through all this work of hefting this couch all the way into this corner and then realizing, oh, this doesn't work, or I don't like this. Yeah, kind of sucks. Now, if I set this to, looks like about 0 degrees, and of course it's 0 because we've changed our axis, which changes the value of the rotation tool. So 0 degrees lines up perfectly like that. That's actually another benefit of resetting your axis early. And then I'll just move this back here, and let's see how it works. If I line it up with the corner of this couch like this, that's not really going to work. Now, actually, here's a question. Is this couch even... interesting. We didn't actually line up our big couch with the center of the media center. Let's move this couch out of the way real quick, and let's do that. So we'll go ahead and snap it so the center of the cushions lines up with the center there. Okay, so that's actually what we're dealing with, which might give us a little bit more room to play with. Let's see. Try pushing this in here. And again, I actually really enjoy doing this kind of thing because you're just experimenting. It's really, really nice. Now, okay, right away we can tell this is getting really cramped. This isn't going to work very well at all. So now we got to pick out something else to do. I'm going to just undo that, make sure it stays above ground. Above ground couches are always nice. Not that that isn't lovely, but let's not, shall we? All right, that's looking better. So we got to figure out, where do we put this thing? Well, this corner's taken up by the door. We could put it here. Could try maybe putting it there. Now, if I want to line it up to a regular, well, that's not really going to work. Yeah, we may actually be a bit out of options here. We may not actually be able to fit the second couch in the room, which is very interesting. So this could be a sort of realization of, okay, maybe I move this to another part of the house. You know, maybe I do something else with it. Do you even want the big one? Do you want the smaller one there instead? You could flip it and then just sort of line it up like this. That's not too bad. Interrupts the flow of the room quite a bit, though. And if you're not going to use your sliding glass door all that much, being able to get to it isn't that big of a deal. Could just kind of lock it like that. And then how much room do we have to walk here? Gotta experiment with this. Always keep experimenting. 2 feet. Okay, so we got plenty of room for that. Now, this is one thing I really like to do whenever I'm remodeling a room, because it's tricky to get a sense of space sometimes, even in SketchUp, if you don't have a reference. So you know, okay, this is that big or whatever. I'm going to go up to the Windows menu, and I'm going to go to Components. And in the Components menu, we have some things kind of built into SketchUp. Now, these are all things that that I've created, right? So these are things I've imported and used and things. So I'm not interested in those. I'm not interested in this in model section. If I click on this little arrow next to the house, I can choose, instead of in model, let's go for just components. Component sampler. Now, okay, in here, in component sampler, we have some people. These are actually members of the SketchUp development team. This guy right here is, there we go. So this is actually a 2D sketch, obviously, because SketchUp isn't really made for building humans or characters. But if we go ahead and measure him, he should be, yeah, he's about 5'9", so that's a pretty average height. So by putting him in the room, we can kind of get a sense of how much space there is. You can get a much better sense of that. You can even grab him, move him around, and just see, okay, yeah, there's enough room to move around through there. This is a little bit tight, but not too bad. So yeah, that's actually not too bad. Now, if we think that this space here is a little bit tight, it's doable, but it's not comfortable. Maybe we need to move all of this stuff over. Maybe that's what we need to do. So if that's the case, maybe instead of the couch being centered on the whole unit, it's centered on the TV. That would make a little bit more sense. So let's go ahead and do that. And to do that, we want to grab that there, and then line it up, and we can, even though the TV is grouped within the media center, we can still snap to that particular midpoint. So we'll see how that looks. That's looking pretty darn good. Now it does need to come out a little bit because it's stuck in the wall. And in that case, you can see it's moving in the wrong thing. I want to move left in relation to the room, not in relation to everything else. So I'm going to have to actually reset my axis for that. This stuff, when you're working with angles especially, gets pretty complex. And actually, I'm really glad that we're able to do that because this is something that takes some getting used to. And you kind of have to rethink about the way you do a lot of this stuff. So that's a little bit better. And we can also make it so these arms here don't line up. Instead, they just kind of meet like this. That's looking a little bit better. It gained us only a few inches, but sometimes that's all you need. And it's also, the couch is lined up with the TV now. That's enough room to get by. Certainly, yeah. That's very nice. All right, so we've only got a few pieces of furniture left to move in, and I think I have a pretty good idea of where they're going to go. But before we get to that, I want to thank the sponsors of this episode, 3D Connection. These guys are the makers of the brand new Space Mouse Wireless. Now, you've heard me talk about the Space Navigator a lot. This is a wireless version of it. The Space Mouse Wireless is, without a doubt, the best version of the Space Navigator that I've used. I absolutely love it. The fact that it is wireless means you can put it anywhere on your desk. You don't have to worry about getting a cable to it. It runs off of an internal battery, which has phenomenal battery life. I can tell you that based off experience. And when it is time to charge it up, you just plug in a USB cable and you're charging. And the great news is, despite the fact that it's wireless, it still has all of the same features that you know and love about the Space Navigator. So it's still the best way to navigate smoothly and intuitively in SketchUp. And with the holiday season coming up, this could be a great gift for the modeler in your life, or something to put on your wish list. Be sure to check it out at 3D Connection's website, 3dconnection.com, and I want to thank them so much for sponsoring this episode of SketchUp, a 3D Toolbox. All right, so let's wrap up the last few pieces of furniture we have here. Now, right away, this thing here, I know exactly what I want to do with him. I'm going to grab him and put him right in this corner, right actually where our friend is standing. I'm just going to move him out of the way. There we go. And then this, I'm going to move in here. Now I want to go ahead and rotate him to match the rest of the furniture in here. So I actually need to change my axis back. There we go. Good news is changing your axis usually only takes a couple clicks. So I'll just rotate him. That looks good. And then I'm going to give myself an overhead view, looking just straight down on the lamp, and just move him back right there. So now people can set their drinks or whatever they want right there, but I've still got access to the drawers and cabinets there. So that's looking good. Now there's a little bit of a weird space right here behind this couch. I think that would be a great place for this lamp. Just move that back in there. That fills in that space quite nicely. And finally, this cabinet right here that we photo match modeled, I'm going to grab him and put him up against this wall. Let's say right there. I'm going to X-ray, line them up. There we go. That is looking pretty darn good. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and switch the axis back to normal. And finally, something else that SketchUp is really good for visualizing if you're redoing a room is paint color. So if I want to, I'm just going to move Saul back here. Nice. So if I want to redo the paint color in the room, it's really very simple. You just retexture it. So let's say instead of this blue, let's say I want more red. I'm going to back off the saturation on it just a little bit. Now, if I click once, obviously, it's just going to paint all the things that are untextured, which is literally everything. So I don't want that. Let's go ahead and grab that red again. Reset itself. Paint that wall. That's looking okay. I want it to be a bit darker than that. That's a bit nicer. Let's go a little bit more unsaturated. That looks pretty darn good right there. So let's say I want these two walls to be red, and then this wall here, I actually don't want to be blue anymore. I repaint that white. Very nice. I like this. It's warm. It's nice and cozy. It's inviting. little bit of a blank spot over here, so maybe I'm thinking, okay, I want to get another cabinet for here, or some shelves or something like that, so you can see what else you would need. But yeah, I've rearranged this room completely, and I think it works quite well. It's nice to kind of also go up and get an aerial view, see the floor plan, and see if you're missing anything important. Like I can tell right now, I actually want to move this guy over here so he's more in line with the couch. There we go. Very nice. And again, I have my old one. So here's my old layout, and here is my new layout. So that is our remodel project completed. Thank you guys so much for going through this series with me. I hope you guys found it enjoyable and educational as well. I will have the lesson file for this episode. I'll actually have two of them. I'll have one as the model looked at the beginning of this episode, so if you want to just do what we did in this episode, you'll have a starting point. And I'll also have this model right now, the final version, so you can go in and play around with it, see what you should end up with at the end of your exercise. And also, if you want to change anything, I am by no means an interior decorator by trade. I can model things, but where you put everything is entirely up to you, very subjective. So I would highly recommend you just kind of toy around with it a little bit and see what works for you. So those lesson files will be on our website at www.harwoodpodcast.com. If you have any questions or comments for me about the show, you can email me at cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. And other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.